Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nigel Argall. I'm the author of Do, Manage, Lead, the book Essential Bible-Based Tools for Leaders. Today we're going to be thinking win-win. You may have found yourself as a professional in a negotiation, in a discussion. At the end somebody says, great, that's a win-win solution. Where does that phrase come from? How do we get there? What does it mean? That's what we're going to be exploring today, and what might be the alternatives and the other possibilities. Now, as always, before we do that, we're going to go into a Bible story. We're going to be looking at a little section of Jacob's life today from the book of Genesis. Two things, just first of all, to set the context of this. Jacob, he's one of the great characters of the Old Testament. He's actually in a difficult period of his life. He's on the run. He ends up with one of his slightly distant family members, Laban. Also, just to sensitize you to some of the cultural values in this short passage that we're going to look at, to our minds, they might seem a little bit offensive. This was a culture 4,000 years ago where women were seen as either the property of their husband or their father. I don't want you to get hung up on that issue now, because I just want you to listen to the narrative, and we're going to explore what that has to teach us in this area of negotiations. This is from Genesis 29, 14 to 28. Here's the story. Laban said to him, "You're my own flesh and blood." After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, "Just because you're a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." Now Laban had two daughters. The name of the older one was Leah, and the name of the younger one was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel was lovely in form and beautiful, and Jacob was in love with Rachel. So he said to Laban, "I'll work for you for 7 years in return for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "Oh, it's better that I give her to you than some other man. Stay here with me." So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife. My time is completed. I want to lie with her." So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. But when the evening came, he took his daughter Leah and gave her to Jacob, and Jacob lay with her. And Laban gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as a maidservant. When morning came, there was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you've done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" Laban replied, "It's not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. Finish this daughter's bridal week, and then we'll give you the younger one also in return for another 7 years of work." And Jacob did so. He finished out the week with Leah. Then he gave Laban his daughter Rachel to be his wife, and Laban gave his servant girl Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her maidservant. Okay, here's what this theory, what this tool is all about. As leaders, as professionals, as managers, as human beings, we find ourselves in negotiations all the time. It could be something as small as navigating through an issue in your family. It could be a professional, a ministry issue at work. It could be something enormous. It could be a trade agreement between two countries. The great thing about this tool, this thinking, is it applies to all different types of negotiation. Let's have a look at what the different possibilities are. Now, what the theory says is that in any negotiation, in any discussion, there are 4 possible outcomes. Here's the first one: lose, win. Now, in each case, this is me. This is how I feel I have come out of the negotiation. So in this particular case, I feel like I've not done very well. If I'm negotiating with you, you've got the best end of the deal. So that's a lose-win. This isn't very common, but this is a possibility. A lose-lose outcome. Both sides are really unhappy with the way the negotiation has gone. Both sides feel that the other side's done better. Neither side is happy. Here's the third possibility. Win, lose. Now remember, this is me here. So this is an interesting one. Culturally, actually, we're often encouraged to think, well, that's an okay outcome. I'm happy. You're not happy, but hey, does that matter? As far as I'm concerned, I've won. Here's the final outcome. Win-win. And what the advocates of this theory say is that really, most of the time, this is the one we should be going for. Both sides feel that they've done really well. Both sides have got what they want out of the negotiation. It's a win-win outcome. Okay, I want to give you a practical example just to explore this in a little bit more detail. It may seem a small thing, but it's just to illustrate this thinking. I want you to imagine that I'm trying to sell you my car. What are the 4 outcomes? Well, here's the first one. Lose, win. And remember, I'm the first one. So I've lost, you've won. That's where you persuade me, look, nice, nobody wants an old Volvo. It's diesel, it's really not worth very much money. I sell you the car. Afterwards, I discover that actually I could have got a lot more for it than the price that we agreed. I feel that you've stitched me up. I've lost, you've won. That's a lose-win. Lose-lose, I said earlier, a little bit more unusual, but it's a very negative possibility in any negotiation. That's where I sell you the car, you're not happy, I'm not happy, you get your solicitor involved, I get my solicitor involved. Before we know it, we've spent more money on lawyers than the car is worth. Everybody loses. It's a very, very negative outcome. What's the third possibility? Win-lose. That's where actually I oversell the car to you. I persuade you that it's actually a lot better than it is. You get it, you find it not really worth the price you paid. There's a lot of things wrong with it. I go away happy, I've got the money, you feel you've lost. It's a win-lose. What's the final one? That's the win-win one. That's where we're scrupulously honest with each other. I go through all the faults, we research what the thing is worth, we agree a price. You're happy, I'm happy. That's a win-win. Thinking about negotiations, all the possibilities, looking for win-win solutions, let's go back to our Bible story. This is Genesis 29, just the last 2 verses from this part of the story. Genesis 29:28. Jacob did so. He finished out the week with Leah, and then Laban gave his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his servant girl Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as a maidservant. Jacob lay with Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. And he worked for Laban for another 7 years. If you know the story of Jacob, he is an old school haggler. It doesn't matter where you put him, he loves negotiating, but I have to say, he's really got no concept of win-win solutions, and neither has Laban. Actually, if you look at the way they relate, each one is really trying to outwit the other one, and sometimes Laban seems on top, sometimes Jacob seems on top. If you actually look at the long story, by the time Jacob leaves, he's got both daughters, he's got a lot of wealth, he's got half of Laban's sheep and goats, but he's also built a lot of resentment in his relationship with Laban, and by the end things are not good, and there's a little bit of a sort of messy split in their relationship. It's a salutary warning if you go for win-lose solutions rather than win-win solutions. Let's just have a couple of final thoughts on this whole area. I mentioned before, our culture encourages us to think win-lose. That's good enough. As long as I come out on top, that's all that really matters. I hope what we can see today from looking at the possibilities and what we can see from the Bible story is that's really not good enough. What we need to be trying to work towards is win-win solutions. Now, a further thought on this, actually, that often takes a lot of effort. It's very easy to go for the win-lose. It takes a lot more effort for me to proactively work with you if I'm negotiating with you to get that win-win outcome. I might need to say, are you happy with this? Are you sure this is okay? It takes a lot more effort, but the results are worth it. I give an example in the book. When I was working as a youth worker, sometimes I would be asked by another youth worker to come as their speaker on their residential weekend. Now that's a great honour to be asked to do that, but it's a big ask, it's a big job, it means a lot of preparation, and it means a weekend away with somebody else's youth group. What I would try and do in that situation is say, okay, I'll come, but I'm mentoring some of my older young people. Can I bring them along? Maybe they could lead a session, they could do a talk, they can see what a residential looks like. My friend gets me as a guest speaker, but I get something out of the work. It's both sides get something, both sides win. It's a win-win solution. That's it for this video. As always, there's more Bible passages, more reflection, a lot more in the book. Take a look at that. But for now, think win-win.